Picture this. You sit down at age 61, look back, and realize your own life story is practically the blueprint for the entire modern American century. Well, welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack the incredible life memoir of Severt Oliver Leland. This really fascinating document spans from 1878 all the way to 1940, and it gives us this deeply personal front row seat to immigration, the wild frontier, and the gritty realization of the American dream. Right off the bat, Severt doesn't waste any time. He immediately pulls his grandchildren and, really us, into his 1940 living room to share a lifetime of hard-earned wisdom. He's 61, he's sitting in San Francisco, and he realizes that, hey, none of us are around forever. He desperately wants the generations that followed to know exactly where they came from. It's just an incredibly intimate way to kick off a life story, essentially telling us all to gather around and just listen. So this journey really tracks one man's westward expansion across three totally distinct phases of the American frontier. He starts out in a tiny Wisconsin farming community, moves westward to find his fortune and a wife out in Montana, and then eventually pivots to the urban boom of San Francisco. And of course, that's where he ultimately sits down to record his memories. Let's dive into Section 1, Roots in the Wisconsin Soil, the Immigrant Foundation. You know, Severt had this immense, unwavering respect for his parents, Torger and Anna. They were Norwegian immigrants who basically built a life out of absolutely nothing on the Wisconsin prairie. And as their eldest child, Severt never forgot that profound sacrifice. Throughout his entire life, whenever things got rough, he just thought about what his parents had endured, crossing an ocean to a totally unknown world, and suddenly, his own everyday farm troubles seemed a whole lot smaller. We're looking at a massive generational shift here. Take Torger, a man of strong hands and very few words who built barns using classic mortise and tenon joinery. He was literally locking wood together tightly without a single nail. But his American-born son? Well, Severt treated that chisel for a briefcase. He used his head for numbers, learned exactly how to read people, and realized early on that to find real opportunity, he had to just keep moving west. Moving right along to Section 2, the rugged Montana frontier, a new life in the West. So it's 1904. Amidst all the miners, the merchants, and that raw, chaotic energy of the booming West, a 25-year-old Norwegian farmer's son marries a 19-year-old pioneer's daughter. It was quite literally two different worlds colliding to build something completely new. She was practical, she was strong, and totally uncomplaining. And Severt explicitly notes that from the very day they married, every single decision he made was for Amelia and the family they were building together. By blending his farm boy practicality with some incredibly sharp salesmanship, Severt actually opened up a grocery store. This was in Gardiner, a tight-knit mountain town right on the edge of Yellowstone. It was the kind of place where the winter cold was so brutal it could literally split solid wood. But it was also a place where neighbors never even hesitated to help raise a barn or share their provisions. And it's here that they had their first 4 children, carving out a truly successful life on the very edge of the wild world. Which brings us to Section 3, Surviving in San Francisco, Building a Legacy. Eventually, though, the family really needed to escape those brutal Montana winters. So they made this massive pivot. They relocated to a chaotic, magnificent post-earthquake San Francisco, mainly for better schools and broader economic opportunities for their growing kids. Crucially, Severt secured steady work as a government clerk with the U.S. Navy Distributing Department. Now, it wasn't nearly as glamorous as the Wild West, but that reliable government paycheck, that is exactly what would save the family from the devastating impacts of the Great Depression just a few years later. Now, raising 5 kids across 2 states, that requires some serious logistics. By 1940, all the children are completely grown up. They're married and they're building careers of their own, like Juanita the stenographer. Plus, they'd given Severt and Amelia a total of 5 grandchildren. Severt freely credits Amelia with holding it all together, running their sprawling 7-person household like a highly decorated general commanding an army. And it all really culminated at 1287 37th Avenue. Now, it wasn't a sprawling mansion by any means, but for an immigrant's son to pay for his very own home in San Francisco through honest, hard work, well, to Severt, that was the ultimate fulfillment of the American dream. He viewed this milestone as absolute, undeniable proof of the promise of America. And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, Lessons from a Lifetime, Wisdom for the Grandchildren. 36. That's exactly how many years he'd been married to Amelia by the time he sat down to write this memoir. Out of all his wild adventures, career pivots, and cross-country moves, he tells his grandchildren that she was the absolute best decision he ever made. He flat out says none of his success would even exist without her. Look, if you take away absolutely anything from Severt's century of change, make it these 5 foundational pillars. Just notice his unwavering optimism here. Move toward opportunity, not away from fear. He left Wisconsin running towards something, not fleeing from it. And having lived through global wars, a pandemic, and total financial ruin, he still fundamentally believed the country was bigger than its troubles and would always find a way forward. That's a remarkably grounded perspective for us today when things feel so uncertain, isn't it? You can almost picture it. Looking at his window at that classic San Francisco fog, Severt realizes something profound. His incredible journey from a freezing Wisconsin farm to the Pacific coast is really just a single, beautifully unbroken thread. He sees all those past versions of himself, the farm boy, the ambitious salesman, the mountain merchant, the city clerk, and he recognizes that they all neatly stack together to create the 61-year-old man sitting quietly in that living room. So as Severt wraps up his memories and tells his grandkids to go find their grandmother Amelia, who's been patiently listening from the kitchen, he leaves us with a pretty profound sense of legacy. Just like his father built structures with mortise and tenon, Severt built a life, board by board. It leaves us with one incredibly critical question to ponder. What kind of enduring legacy are you constructing with your own life today? Thanks so much for joining me on this incredible journey, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.